Galw'r aelodau I drefn, yr eitem gyntaf yn agenda ni'r prynawn yma yw cwestiynau i'r prif weinidog. Mae'r cwestiwn cyntaf wedi'i dynnu yn ôl, ac felly'r ail gwestiwn, Janet Finch-Saunders.
Diolch, Llywydd. How does the Welsh Government ensure patient safety in Wales?
Well, we hold all NHS organisations to account on a wide range of patient safety indicators, and we encourage an open reporting culture of serious incidents to enable full investigation of every case.
Thank you, First Minister. In North Wales, however, we were shocked last week to learn that of the 77 unintended or unexpected incidents resulting in patient deaths registered across Wales, in the past 12 months, more than half of these fell within the Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board. Every single one of these cases will have been simply devastating to the family and loved ones of these patients. First Minister, questions will be asked as to how the special measures and indeed your government's intervention in realising any improvement, in fact, is actually now to the contrary. I am asking you now, will you please commit to an inquiry as to why the safety of patients under this board and your government's responsibility appears to be increasingly compromised?
Well, the member doesn't fully understand the way these statistics are compiled. First of all, we encourage honesty and openness, and that means we encourage people to report serious incidents. Now, that means, just like the crime statistics, for example, that where more people report serious incidences, then, of course, more are recorded. It doesn't mean there are actually more serious incidents. That said, of course, we want to make sure those incidents are reported. Nothing should be said or done that will discourage reporting in the future, because we want to make sure that incidences are reported and are out in the open. I can say to the member that in 2016 to 17, the crude hospital mortality rate for BCU hospitals was 1.79%, which is less than the Welsh average of 1.81%. So yes, it is important that every case is investigated, but it is important that people come forward, that there is an open culture dealing with complaints, and that, I believe, is what we're seeing here. More complaints are coming forward rather than more cases coming forward.
Question 3, Vicky Howells.
Diolch, Llywydd. What work is the Welsh Government undertaking to tackle fuel poverty in the Cynon Valley?
Well, our key programme for tackling fuel poverty is Welsh Government Warm Homes. Since 2011, we've invested over £240 million to improve the energy efficiency of over 45,000 homes. And since 2012, Nest has spent over £9 million in RCT installing energy efficiency measures to low-income households.
First Minister, despite the progress being made in reducing fuel poverty in Cynon Valley and across Wales through the Welsh Government's suite of practical actions, it seems unlikely that fuel poverty will be eliminated by the previous stated target of 2018. Does the Welsh Government plan to review the fuel poverty strategy in light of that? And if so, what lessons will be drawn from the successful and not so successful elements of the current plan?
Well, the Welsh Housing Conditions Survey is now underway. That will provide important data to help to inform delivery of prosperity for all. It will provide us with a range of information, including updated national fuel poverty estimates and data to help with the targeting of delivery measures. It will also help us to inform discussions with stakeholders, and that will mean, of course, that we can draw on the data that the survey provides in order to help to strengthen the strategy in the future.
David Melding.
First Minister, I agree with what you said about energy efficiency, but it's also quite a startling fact. According to Citizens Advice Cymru, only 12% of those on lowest incomes are on the lowest available tariffs. And I do think there's a job to be done here to inform people of the tariffs that are available and the lowest ones. Welsh Government, local authorities, housing associations, perhaps when they're doing the various schemes that you've been referring to, can remind people how important it is to seek out the lowest tariff.
I'm sympathetic to that. People tend to stick with the same provider on the same tariff through convenience, and then, of course, they fail to get the best deal. What will help, of course, is to see, as the UK Government has adopted a Labour Party policy, caps on variable energy tariffs. That will help many people who have not taken the opportunity to change their tariffs or find they're not able to do so to benefit from lower prices.
Cwestiynau nawr gan arweinwyr y pleidiau ag arweinydd Plaid Cymru, Lian Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, later today your government is making a statement on minimum alcohol pricing. Now, I'm aware of the public health arguments and the needs to reduce death from cancer in particular. But public health policy should be looking at all problematic substance use. What assessment has your government made of the impact of minimum alcohol pricing on the use of other substances like illegal drugs?
Well, we know that there will be some people, of course, who have an addiction. It may be that there are some who then look at illegal drugs, but for the vast majority of people, this will have two outcomes. Firstly, it will help to reduce the health issues that surround over-drinking. And secondly, actually, it will help pubs, because it's the pubs who suffer the most as a result of supermarkets selling that undercuts pubs, which we know are important for our community. So there's actually a commercial aspect to this as well. But we make no apologies for wanting to ensure that we get rid of scenarios where very cheap alcohol is available to people in a way that causes them to drink too much and therefore affects their health.
I have some sympathy with the arguments that you've just outlined, but from your answer it doesn't appear as though any assessment has been made between that link, which I hope very much is an oversight, First Minister. We need to reduce drug-related deaths as well as alcohol-related deaths. Now, drug-related deaths have reached a record high in Wales and England. According to latest figures, drug-related deaths are up 44% compared to 2012. For Wales-only figures, in the latest year on record, there was also an increase on the previous year. 168 people lost their lives in 2015. Hospital admissions are also up, which means an increased cost to public services and to the NHS. And anecdotally, we all know that some people are openly using drugs in public places, on our streets, in town centres, where it's less safe both for them and for others. First Minister, can you explain how your substance misuse strategy is using devolved powers to reduce drug-related hospital admissions and drug-related deaths?
One of the problems that is faced at the moment is the Misuse of Drugs Act has always found it difficult to keep up with new drugs as they appear onto the market. Drugs like spice, fairly new, causes people to become extremely violent. And the Leader of Plaid Cymru is absolutely right. There is too much open use of drugs and dealers who seem not to be too concerned about being caught. The first thing to do is to target the dealers. They need to be convicted and jailed. That's where they belong, off the streets. Yes, it's true to say that others may come forward, but it's important to send that message. Now, that's not enough of itself, I understand that. How do we deal with people who misuse drugs? Well, the substance misuse strategy is there to help to do that. It is a combination, to my mind, of medical intervention, but also being strong in terms of clamping down on people who supply the drugs.
Well, locking up the dealers hasn't worked so far, and those powers are out with your control. What you do have control over is health. Now, a harm reduction approach has proven to be the most effective at reducing drug-related deaths. And in your substance misuse strategy, you claim to be committed to a harm reduction approach. We won't know whether the actions that you've taken are sufficient until the new Welsh statistics come out this winter. But of course, the Wales and England statistics that we've already seen don't bode well. If you were serious about reducing drug-related deaths, as well as reducing the wider social problems, you would be open to the solutions proposed by Plaid Cymru Police and Crime Commissioner Arfon Jones. Will you agree to meet Arfon Jones and provide the police and others the support that they need to enable a suitably located pilot safe injecting facility which would reduce harm to the public as well as help to reduce unnecessary deaths from harmful drugs?
Well, there are already regular meetings that take place between the Police and Crime Commissioners and Ministers in any event. It is absolutely right to say that there is very little point, nor would it be right, to see substance misuse as something that is a crime. There are people who have medical issues. The suppliers are different. But those people, of course, who are in the position where they misuse substances, the intervention for them has to be medical. And that means working with the police, that's true. It's what the substance misuse strategy is designed to do. She herself said we're waiting for the Welsh figures, and we want to make sure those Welsh figures show that we are seeing a positive effect on substance misuse. But the challenge is always there. How do you deal with new drugs that appear all the time, synthesised originally? from drugs that didn't exist in 1971. She's right to mention heroin, not right to mention heroin, but it's hugely important that we, as we do, that we work with the police and crime commissioners, as we do, that we develop and give our substance misuse strategy the time to develop, and in that way, I believe we will help fewer and we'll help more and more people to get off the substances they become addicted to.
Arweinydd yr wrthblaid Andrew Arthur Davies.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, there are pressures across the United Kingdom when it comes to the health service. In June 2015, your government took into special measures at the North Wales Health Board, Betsy Cadwallader, and in March this year, you said that actually where deficits run out of control and problems exist in other health boards across Wales, you might well have to consider intervening in those health boards. What we've learned in recent months is that the deficit has doubled in the North Wales Health Board. Waiting times have gone up by 79%, from 4,858 to 8,700, and the deficit is projected at the end of this year to be £100 million, cumulatively over the 3 years. Cumulatively over the 3 years, 50 million for this one financial year. The previous two was £25 million. How can people have confidence that your government is putting Betsy on the road to recovery, and importantly, the concerns that are raised by the member from Aberconwy are being addressed when the statistics show that on waiting times, on recruitment and deficit control and reduction, you are missing all your own targets?
Well, it's simply wrong. First of all, he had to clarify his suggestion that there will be a £100 million deficit. We do not expect any of the health boards to come in with a deficit by the end of this financial year. And that is a message that we make very plain to them.
Well, First Minister, with the greatest respect, in their own board papers, which I presume obviously you have sight of and obviously help put together, because it's under your control, this health board, they are projecting a deficit in this financial year of £50 million. It's not my calculations, it's their calculations. And they talk of, unless there are mitigating measures and actions implemented to bring that deficit down, that deficit will exist. Here in Cardiff, you were saying that isn't the case. Your own managers and directors in North Wales, who are responsible for the day-to-day delivery of service, are saying that there is this deficit. You can't have the two working there. Perhaps that's a cause for concern, that you're so disconnected from what is actually happening on the ground. Yes. I ask you again, First Minister, with waiting times going through the roof, with the deficit and not in control, and above all, the inability to recruit and retain staff, either at GP level or within the hospitals, how, after nearly 3 years under your direct supervision and control, can the residents of North Wales have confidence that their health board is on the road to recovery?
They can have every confidence. As I've said, we do not expect the health board to be in deficit by the end of the financial year. If they identify an issue now, they must deal with it. That is their responsibility. He talks about waiting lists going through the roof and offers no evidence for that. He also says there are problems with recruitment and retention. I can say to him that Train, Live, Work has been hugely successful in filling training places, particularly in terms of nursing applications as well. And do you know what GPs say to us? And I've had this from one consultant who said this to me a month ago. He said, the reason why I wanted to come to Wales was I liked the recruitment campaign, and two other words, Jeremy Hunt.
So why is the why are waiting times that much better in the UK as opposed to what's happening here in Wales? I used figures directly. Well, you say they're not, First Minister. A&E, the 12-hour wait in England, is 78 people waited out of a population of 55 million people, 12 hours or more in A&E. In Wales, the figure was 2,438 out of a population of 3 million. They're not my figures, they're your figures. And what I'm just trying to seek from you, First Minister, is some ability to have confidence. I used the waiting times that your government published last week that said that waiting times had doubled from 4,858 to 8,708. I used the deficit figures that the Health Board themselves have published in their board report. I've used the example that the Health Board say themselves, that this deficit will exist at the end of the financial year unless mitigating actions are taken. So everything I have quoted to you has come either from the Health Board or statistics that have come from your own government. I merely seek assurances from you, First Minister, after nearly 2.5 years of your government being in direct control of the North Wales Health Board, that the Health Board is progressing to a situation where waiting times will come down, doctor vacancies will be filled, and above all, the deficit will come under control. And on 2 occasions, you have failed to give any assurances to date. I think that tells you more about your grip on reality than it does about anything else.
Well, all I can say to him is there's been a complete abdication of responsibility towards the NHS in England. Every time a health board underperforms, it's never the fault of Jeremy Hunt, is it? Never the fault of the Conservative government or Jeremy Hunt. Let me give him a figure that is correct, so he can mull over it. In England, the total waiting list is now the highest on record. The highest on record. That's Tory stewardship of the NHS. There were 409,342 patients over the English target, more than doubled over the last 3 years. More than doubled over the last 3 years. We know in Wales we have gone in the other direction. And he sits there. He sits there and acquiesces in a bung to Northern Ireland, £1.67 billion, some of it on health. He did nothing to represent his country. He did nothing to represent his country. What representations did he make to the UK government and his colleagues to demand that Wales should get a Barnett equivalent of that money? Nothing. He's too scared of them.
Arweinydd Grŵp UKIP, Neil Hamilton.
Returning to the theme mentioned by the Leader of Plaid Cymru earlier on today, the Public Health Minimum Price for Alcohol Wales Bill, how can the First Minister possibly support a measure which is so regressive in the way it works? This is a measure which is explicitly designed disproportionately to target those drinks which are consumed in disproportionate measures by people on low incomes. It's well known that low-income households buy fewer units of alcohol overall, but more of what they buy is priced at less than 40 pence per unit. Where is the equity in a measure that leaves the champagne socialists of the posher suburbs of Cardiff unaffected, but target bombs the beer drinkers of Blaenau Gwent?
Is he seriously saying that people on low incomes are proportionately bigger drinkers?
No.
That's snobbery of an extent I've never quite seen before, I have to say that. And the consequence of his argument is that, in that case, we should reduce the tax on tobacco. Reduce the tax on tobacco, because that's disproportionately regressive as well. So let's reduce the tax on tobacco as well. It's exactly the same argument. What we want to do is to make sure that alcohol does not get cheaper and cheaper as it has done, so that people drink more and more because they see it as cheap. As I said earlier on, there's also an issue here for the pubs. Pubs have been hammered year after year after year after year by cheap supermarket alcohol. And pubs are responsible places where people drink. They look after drinks. They don't serve people who are drunk, and pubs have been lost at a rate of knots in our communities. And you speak to any publican, and they will say to you that part of the reason is that people are buying cheap supermarket alcohol sold at below cost price quite often. Now, those people deserve fairness as well. So, yes, of course there's a health aspect to this, but also, of course, as a side issue, we know that one of the consequences is that it will provide a far better level playing field for pubs as well.
Say that people on low incomes buy more alcohol. I said the opposite, actually, that people on low incomes buy less alcohol overall than people on higher incomes. But more of the alcohol that they do drink is cheaper brands, not more expensive brands. So it's going to have a disproportionately tough effect upon people on low incomes. The Centre for Economic and Business Research said in 2009 that there's substantial evidence overall that heavier drinkers are least responsive to price changes. So the problem alcohol drinkers are the ones who are least likely to respond to the measures which are now being proposed. What's going to happen here is that the real problem drinkers will carry on drinking, but actually they'll have less money to spend on things like food. So in other dietary respects, their health is going to suffer. This will have no positive impact whatsoever. The only people who are really going to benefit from this are the supermarkets, because this is not a tax which is being imposed. You'll just raise the price of a cheap product, and that will produce extra profits for the supermarkets. It certainly won't produce extra profits for pubs. Well,
again, the same argument could be used for cigarettes. If he's saying that the tax on cigarettes should be reduced because it's regressive, let's hear him say that. As far as alcohol is concerned, we know that alcohol's got proportionally cheaper. We know it's encouraged people to drink more. No question about that. If it's cheaper, it will do that. This is a way of ensuring the balance is right between the price of alcohol and people's health. I see nothing wrong with that, and it's hugely important that we have a responsible attitude to alcohol, rather than one that says, buy one, get one free, buy two, get one free. These are, and they're not always on the cheapest brands. They're quite often on brands that are proportionally quite expensive. That's the way that people are encouraged to buy more and drink more. And surely that's not something we want to encourage.
There is a problem with a relatively small number of people who overindulge. And of course, we do want to target those. The problem with a measure of this kind is it's so scattergun in its approach that it actually penalises the many who are moderate drinkers, whilst not actually having any measurable effect upon those whom we do want to help.
I don't follow that logic. The same logic applies to cigarettes. He could stand up and he could say, well, it penalises the occasional smoker, and so the duty on tobacco should be reduced. The two things have the same kind of effect. Look, for me, it's hugely important that as a society, we don't have alcohol being sold below cost price, and it happens in some of the offers we see in the supermarkets. We don't have people being encouraged to buy more alcohol than they otherwise would want to buy. That encourages people who would otherwise be quite moderate drinkers to drink more than is good for them. And that is something that we're keen to avoid. As it happens, as a side effect, it also enables pubs to be able to compete on a level playing field with the supermarkets who have driven so many pubs out of business. Don't talk to me, talk to publicans and they will tell you this. The difference in price proportionally between supermarket alcohol now and alcohol in pubs is far, far greater than ever it was before. And we need to make sure that people have a place to go in villages where they live, through pubs, for example. This is not what the intention of the legislation is. The intention is that it's a legislation that deals with health. But there are, of course, wider effects that are identified.
Cwestiwn 4, Jenny Rathbone.
How is the Welsh Government using public procurement to drive up horticultural production in Wales?
Well, the National Procurement Service develops collaborative approaches which aim to grow the amount of Welsh produce supplied to the public sector.
Thank you. I've just come from the Vegetable Summit being held in the Pier Head at the same time as in London and Edinburgh. And we heard really important pledges from a wide variety of producers and promoters of, for example, children's rights. The Children's Commissioner highlighted the fact that nearly 80% of children aged 5 to 10 are not eating enough vegetables, and 95% of 11 to 16-year-olds are not eating enough vegetables to be able to learn and play effectively, and that this is a children's rights issue. We heard important pledges from the largest supermarket in the UK, Tesco, who have agreed to buy seasonal veg from UK growers, as well as putting more vegetables in their meal deals. Castle Howell, Brains, Cardiff University, Cardiff Met, Cardiff and the Vale Health Board, Cardiff Council, all pledging to serve and promote more vegetables in their pubs, canteens and dining rooms. What can we do to ensure that that increased purchase of vegetables comes from Welsh producers rather than from other UK outlets or indeed from abroad?
Well, can I welcome the fact that the Vegetable Summit is taking place at the Pier Head building as we speak. It brings together farmers, retailers, processors and government looking at the supply chain and how we can raise vegetable production. We are committed through the Food and Drink Action Plan, which we share with our publicly appointed industry board, to not only grow the Welsh food and drink sector, but to do so sustainably and to tackle the deep-rooted challenges of diet. And the National Procurement Service has set up buying arrangements that allow Welsh public bodies to access a wide range of vegetable products to support healthier meal planning.
Paul Davies.
Diolch, Llywydd. Yn dilyn cwestiwn Jenny Rathbone, allwch chi ddweud wrthyn ni pa drafodaethau y mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi cael gydag awdurdodau lleol ynglŷn â chaffel bwyd I gyrff cyhoeddus mwyn sicrhau bod mwy a mwy o gynhyrchwyr bwyd lleol yn cael ei defnyddio gan awdurdodau lleol. Ac hefyd, allwch chi ddweud wrthyn ni un peth mae'ch Llywodraeth chi wedi wneud yn y flwyddyn diwetha I wneud gwahaniaeth a sicrhau fod mwy a mwy o gynhyrchwyr bwyd lleol yn cael ei defnyddio yn y sector cyhoeddus?
Wel, mae yna grŵp cydweithio wedi cael ei sefydlu a maen nhw yn gynnwys rhai o'r sector gyhoeddus yng Nghymru. Nod y grŵp hynny yw sicrhau bod ni'n gweithredu ar sicrhau bod yna fargen da ynglŷn â chaffael. Mae hwnna yn gweithio gyda chyrff cyhoeddus a hefyd gyda rhywun sydd yn cynhyrchu mwyn symud y prosiect hyn ymlaen. So felly mae yna bethau'n cael ei wneud wrth gweithio gyda diwydiant mwyn sicrhau bod mwy o fwyd o dir yn y mewn o Gymru. Un o'r pethau wrth gwrs wedi newid dros y blynydde, ar un adeg, un o'r problemau oedd gyda'r cytundebau mawr fel y gwasanaeth iechyd, doedd na ddim corff neu dim busnes digon mawr. i sicrhau bod nhw ddim yn mewn i'r farchnad hynny dydd ar ôl dydd, mis ar ôl mis. Mae hwnna wedi newid nawr, a hwnna wrth gwrs o achos y gwaith ni wedi gwneud fel Llywodraeth ynglyn a chefnogi edrych ar hwn mewn ffordd gwahanol nid yn yr un hen ffordd.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd. Dwi'n gweld prif weinidog bod Eiwyn Dinbych yn mynd i fod yn cael ei gwaeni fel pwding fofi yn y cynulliad, felly croeso i bawb cyfannu drwy biter Eiwyn hyfryd hwnna. Ond wrth i ni ymadael ar CAP, sydd eriod wedi rhoi unrhyw cefnogaeth i'r garddwriaeth yng Nghymru, pa gamau dych chi'n mynd i cymryd fel Llywodraeth i sicrhau bod yna cefnogaeth i adeiladu'r sailwaith a gyfer wneud yn siŵr bod ffermwyr nawr yn gallu buddsoddi mewn garddwriaeth ac ar gyfer y marchnadoedd newydd.
Na, mae hwnna'n rhywbeth gwrs ni'n ystyried gyda diwydiant ar hyn o bryd. Y peth cyntaf i moyn pwysleisio wrth gwrs yw'r ffaith bod ni wastad wedi gweud dyle'r un maint o arian fod ar gael yn y dyfodol a beth sydd nawr. A beth ni wedi gweud wrth Llywodraeth y Senedd yw dyle'r arian wedi cael ei ddod i mewn un lle a bod ddim wedi newid ynglyn â'r cyfanswm hynny heb fod yna gytundeb rhwng y Llywodraethau i gyd. Ond, wrth gweud hynny, mae yna gyfle ni nawr i ystyried ym mha ffordd allwn ni i ddefnyddio'r arian hynny lles y ffermwyr Cymru, edrych ar ffyrdd newydd falle o weithio, a mae hwnna'n un peth. Allwn ni ystyried, fi'n cofio 17 o flynyddoedd yn ôl, pan o'n i'n aelod o Bwyllgor Ameth y Cynulliad, oedd yna adolygiad wedi cael ei wneud ar y pryd hynny ar arallgyfeirio, a'r peth dath reit lan ar y top ynglyn a beth oedd ar cryfder mwyaf yn y pen draw oedd tyfu llysiau organeg. So felly hwn yn rhywbeth sydd wedi bod rownd dros amser. Ond wrth gwrs, doedd y system talu subsidies ddim yn ddigon hyblyg mwyn sicrhau bod ni'n gallu defnyddio'r arian yn y ffordd byddwn ni eisiau. Mae'r gyfle yna wrth gwrs yn y dyfodol sicrhau bod nhw'n digwydd.
Cwestiwn 5, Hefin David.
Will the First Minister make a statement on patterns of self-employment in Wales?
Well, self-employment remains a cornerstone of the Welsh economy and is central to the national strategy. We continue to support businesses to start and grow, to invest and, of course, to improve their contribution to the economy of Wales.
This afternoon I chaired the cross-party group on small and medium-sized enterprises, and it was our pleasure to welcome the Federation of Small Business to launch their report, Going Solo, Understanding Self-Employment in Wales, written by Professor Andrew Henley and Dr Mark Lang. There are a number of recommendations for government there, but one of the stark issues in the report is that the largest levels of self-employment are in Powys at 23%, and the lowest levels are in the northern valleys that I represent and others at 8.7%. What specifically can the Welsh Government do to incentivise and increase self-employment in those valleys communities, and particularly among underrepresented groups and women?
What's interesting about the report is that there's been an assumption that the reason why more people are self-employed is because economic circumstances have dictated that they've lost their jobs. But in fact, it seems to indicate that it's entrepreneurial pull. It's actually a desire to be more entrepreneurial, which is something we have sort of encouraged for many, many years in Wales. Now, somebody who was self-employed, mainly, before I came to this place, I understand some of the challenges that can cause. How do we take it forward in the Valleys Task Force? That's done a lot of work to see how we can encourage more self-employed. I don't believe that people lack entrepreneurial flair in the valleys. I think it's encouragement. It's being able to say to people, you can do this. There's no reason why you can't be successful, and people need that encouragement. And that's exactly one of the things that the Valleys Task Force is looking to move forward in the future.
Russell George.
Thank you, Clive. First Minister, I also attended the event which Hefin chaired earlier on, and we heard how rural Wales is heavily reliant on the contribution of self-employment to the economy, and Hevin's pointed out 23% of those in Powys are self-employed, and that compares to the Welsh average of 13%. Now, the FSB Wales report has found that those who are self-employed tend to be older, and young people are not following in their footsteps. Now, can I ask, what consideration has the Welsh Government given to understanding the barriers to young people becoming self-employed, in rural Wales in particular, and what potential could a mid-Wales growth deal play to ensure that there are local solutions which meet the demands of self-employment in Wales, opposed to a pan-Wales solution which might not always be appropriate?
I think regional solutions are important. The member is right to say that there can't be one size fits all across Wales. When it comes to younger people, much of the starts in schools, to my mind. I know that work has been done in schools with encouraging entrepreneurial projects, and of course the Young Entrepreneur Scheme, which we have, and also of course providing the kind of financial support to the youngsters that they need. Older people often have access to capital in a way that younger people don't. They can use that capital to set up in business. How do we support people to come into business? Business Wales is one area where that's done, of course. The Development Bank will be able to assist people to come into business as well, improving SMEs' ability to access finance. That's the biggie. We know that the banks in the UK have historically been resistant to providing capital for start-up enterprises, which is why we fell behind for many, many years, which is why, of course, one of the reasons why the Development Bank will be there. You can encourage people, but they need to access capital to start up their business. Unless they've got family capital behind them, there's got to be another way of doing it, and that, of course, is where Business Wales, where the Development Bank for Wales comes in. Adam Price.
Un o'r pethau mwyaf trawiadol sydd yn yr adroddiad yw'r ffaith yma bod 38% o gyfanswm twf swyddi yng Nghymru dros y 10 mlynedd diwetha yw briodoli i'r hunan gyflogedig. A dros yr un cyfnod, does na ddim cynnydd net o gwbl wedi bod yn y sector tramor, yw sector mewnfuddsoddi. Ac eto, a wy'n dyfynnu yr adroddiad fan hyn, mae iaith llunio polisïau economaidd wedi sgwio'n anferth tuag at bwysigrwydd sicrhau mewnfuddsoddiad a pherchnogaeth dramor. Ydy'r Prif Unidog yn derbyn ffigurau'r FSB, ac os yw ydy e'n derbyn yr angen am newid pwyslais nawr I fusnesau cynhenid a'r hunan gyflogedig?
Dwi'n credu bod rhaid ei dewis. Wy'n cytuno ar un adeg, wy'n gwybod yn ystod y WDA, y bwyslais oedd yn hollol ar buddsoddiad y dramor. Yn hollol, dim ots nhw am fusnesau bach. O'n i'n gofio siarad dy rai o bobl yn gweithio ar y WDA. So felly, ar y pryd hynny, oedd popeth, oedd ffocws ar sicrhau buddsoddiad, ac ar ôl LG, dath dim byd mewn, mawr ta beth. So, mae fe'n holl bwysig I sicrhau bod ni'n adeiladu sylfaen hunan gyflogedig yr economi, deall hwnna, ond dwi'n credu ni'n gwneud hynny wrth osgoi unrhyw fath o help I fusnesau sydd yn cyflogi miloedd o bobl yng Nghymru, sef Tata, sef GE, sef Airbus, sef cwmnïau fel EADS ac yn y blaen, sydd yn cyflogi llawer iawn o bobl yng Nghymru. So felly, mae rhaid I ni ddal I bwysleisio ar dynnu fusoddiad o dramor, ond dwi'n meddwl nid dim ond wneud hwnna dyn ni'n wneud. A byddwn ni'n dadlau taw nawr, wrth gwrs, mae'r cydbwysedd yn iawn gyda ni, a ni moyn sicrhau bod mwy a mwy o busnesau, nid dim ond yn cael ei sefydlu yng Nghymru, ond yn tyfu. Un o'r problemau ni wastad wedi gwynebu yw'r ffaith bod y busnesau yn tyfu I lefel, a wedyn mae'r perchnogwyr yn gwerthu. Wel, mae rhaid ni sicrhau bod mwy yn cael gwneud mwyn bod bobl yn teimlo bod nhw'n gallu tyfu'r busnesau hynny, mwyn bod nhw'n gallu mynd yn fwy. A I fi, na beth yw'r her mwy yn yr economi. Gweud wrth bobl, pidwch gwerthu mas, ond sefwch mewn I helpu chi difu'n fwy.
Cwestiwn 6, Mark Isherwood.
How is the Welsh Government supporting the palliative care sector in Wales?
Yes, the updated end-of-life care delivery plan published in March sets out the extensive range of actions we're taking to deliver a collaborative approach to improve end-of-life care throughout Wales, and that includes £6.4 million to provide specialist palliative care services.
Well, thanks for your answer. As you're probably aware, the majority of end-of-life care in Wales is provided by Wales' 13 adult and 2 children's hospices. You indicate a figure of roughly 6.4 million, I think you said, but they have to they spend £32.5 million a year to deliver those services in people's homes and also daycare and respite. So they're having to raise over £2 million a month. And they're keen to help you, the Welsh Government, and their local health boards do very much more. How can you or will you engage with them and ask them how they can help you achieve more, where perhaps a little bit more funding from the health boards and the government would save massively more for health boards and liberate services to help tackle some of the other problems we've heard referred to today in different contexts?
Yeah. Well, if we look at the recent report by Hospice UK into hospice care in Wales, that is something that we welcome, what the report said. It recognises the positive steps outlined in the palliative and end-of-life care delivery plan. It does highlight the need for assurances about long-term funding, and as part of the budget agreement with Plaid Cymru, we did make £1 million extra available in 2017 to further enhance end-of-life care provision. That is recurrent funding as well. But of course, in terms of engagement with the sector, it is the care boards that provide that level of engagement, and that's why, of course, we work with them in order to identify the resources that are needed.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Llywydd, a mae'r grŵp trawsbleidiol a'r hosbisau y gofal lliniarol yma yn y cynulliad yn edrych ar y bosibilrwydd o ymchwilio i sydd i fynd i'r afel a anghydraddoldebau yn mynediad i ofal hosbis yng Nghymru. Mi gyfeirio chi at yr arian sicrhawyd mewn gytundeb rhyngthon ni a'r Llywodraeth, ond onid y gwir amdani ydy bod cyfres o Lywodraethau Llafur wedi methu mynd i'r afel ar elfen sylfaenol yna bod yna anghydraddoldeb yn y mynediad tuag at y gofal cwbl allweddol yma ar draws Cymru.
No, rydym yn derbyn hwnna. Ni wedi sicrhau bod yna fusoddiad ar gael i fyrdde iechyd. Mae'n mater, wrth gwrs, i fyrdde iechyd i sicrhau bod yna wasanaeth ar gael, ac wrth gwrs mae hwnna'n rhywbeth yn gweithio gyda nhw'n ynglyn â sicrhau bod nhw'n cael ei weithredu. Ni'n gwybod bod hospices ei hunain wedi cymryd mwy o rôl yn y 5 mlynedd diwetha nag o'r blaen, nid dim ond ynglyn â gofal, ond ynglyn â rhoi cyngor i bobl hefyd. A nawr, wrth gwrs, ni moyn gweithio gyda'r bwrdd mwyn sicrhau bod ni'n gwybod beth nesaf sydd gorfod cael ei wneud mwyn sicrhau bod yna wasanaeth cyson ar gael ar draws Cymru.
Cwestiwn 7, David Rowlands.
Diolch, Ewyth. What assessment has the First Minister made on the impact that any changes to immigration controls following Brexit will have on the NHS in Wales?
Yes, it's bad.
Well, I thank the First Minister for his observation, but the latest figures show that immigrant workers from the EU amount to just 1.55% of employees in NHS Wales, and given that the Welsh population of immigrants from the EU amounts to 3.3%, it would seem that controls on immigration may well have a positive effect on our health service. But I have previously brought to the attention of this chamber the fact that each year 80,000 applicants to work in the UK NHS are turned down due to lack of training places. Firstly, surely, First Minister, it is time that we in Wales expanded training facilities, reconsidered the practice of sending every nurse to university, and explored the possibility of reintroducing the distinction of SEN and SRN nurses and on-the-ward training, particularly for SEN staff. Incidentally, Mark Drakeford said in 2015 that discussions on the long-term future of the NHS in Wales should sit outside the knockabout of day-to-day party politics. Perhaps, First Minister, we should once again examine that excellent suggestion.
Could I say to the member, I could not care less where doctors come from when they work in the Welsh NHS, as long as they deliver an excellent service to our patients. There are many doctors who come from the EU and beyond India, of course. We know many doctors have come from India. Frankly, they are great additions to our NHS. The market for doctors and for nurses is worldwide. It's worldwide. People will go with a portable qualification. They will go to where they think they will get the best deal for them as an individual and from their families. Now, we know, for example, it's true to say that EU nurses make up a very small percentage of the NHS workforce in Wales, but can we really afford to lose 360 nurses? Is that what he's saying? Because what he seems to be saying is that's fine as long as we train people to a lower standard in the future, and that will be fine as far as the future is concerned. Is he really saying, for example, that we don't want doctors from the EU? Well, I have to say, I want to make sure that doctors and nurses come to work in Wales, regardless of their nationality, because they will add a lot more to the NHS than they take out. The myth that is peddled by his party is that somehow immigration puts a strain on the NHS. Most of the people who come to Wales are young. They pay taxes, they pay far more in than they take out via the NHS. And we know that we pay tribute to those doctors from the EU and beyond who come to work in the Welsh NHS, who contribute to treating our people, who save lives, and for me that's far more important than checking their passport.
Susie Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. The External Affairs Committee recently reported on the implication of Brexit for Welsh ports, of course, and there was criticism there that the Economy Secretary hadn't at that stage had direct conversations with his counterpart in Ireland, but I think that may have happened now. Do you know whether there were any discussions about whether existing technology could be rolled out to help maintain the invisible border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, but also to reduce the delays in transit of people as well between Wales and the Republic of Ireland itself?
Well, firstly, the reason why the committee mentioned it is I mentioned it in the committee. I was the one who first raised it, the issue of the ports. I discussed it months ago with Leo Varadkar when he became Taoiseach, and made it clear that we could not support a scenario where there was a more seamless border between Northern Ireland and the Republic and Wales and the Republic. Why 70% of trade in GB and Ireland goes through the Welsh ports? If there's any incentive to go through the Scottish ports instead through Northern Ireland, obviously it's bad, and the committee identified that, it's bad for Wales. So there have been discussions with the Irish government on this. Frankly, I know the members' views on Brexit, and I appreciate them. I have now seen many documents from the UK government that say that the issue of border control will be taken forward by way of innovative technology. It doesn't exist. The technology does not exist. If it existed, we'd have sight of it by now. It talks about having innovative solutions, exploring solutions. That is code for we have no idea how to deal with this. Now, it's one thing, of course, to have border-free travel between, or passport-free travel between Wales and Ireland. Customs-free travel is a different thing. There were always random checks in those ports in years gone by, but not every vehicle was checked. There's a greater problem in Dover, because the UK doesn't have the capacity at the moment to put in place border controls in Dover with enormous delays. Same, I suspect, applies on the French side as well, if I'm honest, in Calais. I do not believe that there is a technological solution to this. If there was one, then by now we'd know from the UK government what that solution is. One of the solutions that was put to me was that there would be cameras on the border between North and South in Ireland. You put cameras in Northern Ireland and we could open a book as to how long they'd stay there, because they just wouldn't stay there. It's a physical manifestation of the border. People would see them as a breach of the peace agreement. So it's an intractable problem. It can be resolved. The resolution is that the UK stays in the customs union. Then there's no problem. There's no problem. UK leaves the customs union and you have to have the same kind of border as exists, for example, between Gibraltar and Spain, because Gibraltar is outside the customs union. That is an extremely hard border. But you cannot have a scenario where goods go to two different markets in two different customs unions without any kind of physical checks on crossing a land border. This has always been the problem to my mind. In the Brexit referendum, nobody thought about Ireland and nobody thought about that border. And it's still an intractable problem. The solution? Stay in the customs union.
Steffan Lewis.
Diolch, Llywydd. Of course, one of the greatest threats to staffing long-term in the Welsh NHS would be for us to have a one-size-fits-all UK immigration policy after separation with the European Union. The University of Edinburgh have published a paper by Professor Christina Boswell, Scottish Immigration Policy After Brexit, evaluating options for a differentiated approach. It looks at a number of ways of regional and national approaches to migration post-Brexit, knowing the intentions of the UK government in terms of their aspirations. The options include looking at human capital, points-based system, post-study work schemes, employer-led schemes, occupational shortage lists, which I would suggest are of particular importance here in Wales. And in this paper, they are proposing imaginative ways in order to have minimal administration costs and burdens. Would the First Minister agree that this is now worth exploring and taking forward seriously, that we need Wales to have its say on a regional or national post-Brexit migration policy for the UK? Because at the moment, this is the only constituent part of the UK that has said very little about that prospect. Otherwise, we face having the UK net migration target being the big policy objective of the UK that, as we know, will be detrimental to Welsh public services and the Welsh economy.
Well, let me just remind you of what I have said publicly, to set his fears at rest. First of all, I don't agree with an artificial cap. I don't see what sense that has. Surely an economy needs to recruit according to its needs, not have an artificial cap. If there were to be an artificial cap, then there are serious issues that arise as to whether there be sectoral caps. Now, I have no doubt The thinking of the UK government will be to do as much as possible for the City of London. And the financial services sector is important to us, but it's hugely important for the City of London. And we will end up with a higher sectoral cap proportionally for the City than we do for the NHS. Now, clearly, that would not be in Wales's interests. He didn't say it specifically, but I know he is intimating the idea of regional quotas. I think that's an interesting idea. It is done in Canada, it is done in Australia, all right, they're far bigger, but it's not impossible to do this. Personally, I prefer there not to be a cap, but if there is to be a cap, I think then there is a case for looking carefully at whether regional quotas would work, and particularly whether they'd work for Wales.
Cwestiwn 8, Sian Gwen Llian.
Lleoli swyddi Llywodraeth Cymru.
Wel, bydd y strategaeth leoli yn creu ystad sy'n gynaliadwy, yn economaidd ac yn amgylcheddol sy'n cyd-fynd ag anghenion y Llywodraeth hon y dyfodol. Mae'r strategaeth yn cynnal ein hymrwyniad i weithredu ledled Cymru gan sicrhau bod ein hystad yn gweithredu mor effeithiol a bosibl ac yn lleihau yn costau gweithredu.
Wel, mae'n hollol amlwg nad ydy'r strategaeth lleoli swyddi yn gweithio os mae'r bwriad oedd gwasgaru swyddi Llywodraeth i bob cwr o Gymru a chadw'r rheini oedd eisoes yn bodoli. Mae pobl yn fetholaeth i yn teimlo ein bod yn cael yn gadael ar ôl, teimlad sy'n cael ei gefnogi efo ffeithiau. Ffaith 1, mae Llywodraeth chi yn bwriadu cau a gwerthu adeilad yng Nghaernarfon, heb unrhyw fwriad i godi adeilad newydd yn ei le, gan greu ansicrwydd mawr. A ffaith 2, mae nifer y swyddi Llywodraeth sydd wedi'u lleoli yng Nghaernarfon wedi gostwng 35% dros y 7 mlynedd dwytha. Mae bwriad y strategaeth yn glir, ond unwaith eto rydych chi wedi methu pan mae'n dod yn fater o weithredu'r amcanion. Felly anwch chi ail ystyried, edrych ar y strategaeth eto mwyn gosod meini prawf a targedau penodol newydd mwyn dilifro twf a swyddi o ansawdd i bob cwr o Gymru.
Wel, yn gyda'r dweud wrth yr eir, dyw swyddfa Caernarfon ddim yn gadael y dre, maen nhw'n symud o un i'r llall. Mae'n wir i weid bod y adeilad, maen nhw'n symud o'r adeilad lle maen nhw'n nawr ar y top, a wedyn edrych ar swyddfeydd newydd, mwy modern, mwyn aros yn y dre. So, oes ddim problem ynglyn â'r swyddi yn sefyll yng Caernarfon. A di yn wir bod swyddi wedi cael ei golli, mwyn wir dros Cymru, wedi colli mwyn a fil o weision sifil dros y blynyddoedd diwethaf, o 7 mlynedd. So, mae'n wir i weid bod yna swyddi wedi cael ei golli ym mhob rhan o Gymru. Wrth weid hynny, wrth gwrs, os edrychwn ni ar y gogledd, mae gyda ni swyddfa Cyfarfod Llawn, bydd pencadlys banc datblygu yn Wrecsam. So felly ni wedi ymrwymo i sicrhau bod mwy o swyddi'n cael ei symud mas o Gaerdydd. Pan ddechreuodd y cynulliad, oedd na swyddfa yn Gaernarfon, oedd dim byd yn Merthyr, oedd dim byd yn Cyfarfod Llandudno, oedd dim lot yn Aberystwyth, oedd Comisiwn Goedwigoedd yn Aberystwyth, ond dim llawer yn fwy na hwnna. Ni wedi dongos ein hymrwyniad ni i symud swyddi mas o Gaerdydd, a does dim problem o gwbl ynglyn â swyddfa Caernarfon. Ni'n gwybod faint mor bwysig yw Caernarfon i helpu ffermwyr, a hefyd wrth gwrs ynglyn â sicrhau cyflogaeth yn y dre.
Ac yn ola, cwestiwn 9, Joyce Watson.
Diolch. Llywydd, what guarantee has the First Minister obtained from the UK Government during Brexit discussions in relation to securing human rights?
Well, the UK Government has said it won't repeal or replace the Human Rights Act while the process of leaving the EU is underway. We also support efforts to amend the withdrawal bill to ensure, whenever it's introduced, to ensure the UK continues to respect the EU's Charter of Fundamental Rights after we leave the EU.
Well, when Britain does leave the EU, the Charter of Fundamental Rights will no longer have any effect in UK law. And that means that those rights not covered by the Human Rights Act, for example, the rights of the child, workers' rights and discrimination, could be scrapped. The Great Repeal Bill White Paper does promise, however, to protect existing rights. But I don't know about you, First Minister, but I am hugely sceptical about a Conservative Party that opposed many of those rights in the first place in terms of trusting them to defend rights post-Brexit. And we only have to look very quickly across at the way that they have been willing so far to gamble with EU citizens' residence rights. But on another tangent, First Minister, will you reassure Welsh University over their rights to academic freedom from government meddling? I'm sure that you would have read today, as I have, the reports on the frankly sinister letter sent by the Tory MP Chris Heaton-Harris to all Vice-Chancellors asking for the names of anyone teaching European affairs or Brexit?
Well, first of all, the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights contains rights and freedoms under 6 titles: dignity, freedoms, equality, solidarity, citizens' rights and justice. Surely there is nobody who would argue that none of those things should apply when we leave, which is why it makes sense for that charter to remain. There are some, not all in fairness, but there are some within the Conservative Party who would love to get rid of so many of the protections that have been built up over many years. They are the hard right of the Conservative Party. I'm sure that they would delight in removing as many rights and protections as possible. I hope the sensible people within that party actually win out. Of not sensible, I understand that a letter was sent by an MP I've not heard of, Heaton Harris, who sent a letter to all academics, it's not something I've heard of before, all academics demanding to know who teaches courses on Brexit and the content of those syllabuses. That is as authoritarian request as could possibly be made. Now, I don't say that the entire Conservative Party would agree with his actions, but if that is the case, it's incumbent on government ministers to slap him down, metaphorically. Because it's absolutely outrageous that somebody should look to create, in effect, a list of people who are there to be criticised because they do not follow the party line. I suspect this gentleman will have a lot to teach Stalin.
Diolch i'r Prif Weinidog. Yr eitem nesaf felly yw'r datganiad a chyhoeddiad.